of Wildman Athletica here in Seattle at SeaTac. Let's see if we can't get anybody on. We are way off of our normal schedule today. We are 25 minutes late. We had a bit of trouble with security. The gentleman in front of me was not being approved, even though he was meeting all the laws correctly. Great, Grant Gardner's online. Grant, tell me how I'm doing with signal. Is my signal better? Is it worse? It hasn't dropped out yet, which is a strong sign. So we had just finished our immersion at FlowShala over the weekend, starting Friday night from 5 to 8 p.m. Grant says sound and visual seem good. Excellent. Let me know if it gets too loud in here. It's a pretty quiet corner right now. We had our Friday night. We started with an hour of Mace, then we went into steel mace vinyasa to instantly show how steel mace and staff are linked on a basic level. Overhead press, drop, swing, warrior stance. It's all the exact stuff that you start doing with staff immediately once you start being put under stress. And then the third hour was staff again. Half kneeling position, staff, attack, defend drills. Saturday we start in the morning and we start a little bit later. We start at 10. Try to let everybody sleep in because it is a hard day. And we do staff, heavy club, steel mace, staff. Then we go to lunch. Then we come back and we do staff, heavy club, steel mace, staff. Again, we do that both Saturday and Sunday. And each day the drills get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit harder. People really like the seminar format. I really like it. I think that it's no time wasted. And I think that that's the most important thing. We're talking right now about our September seminar. I believe it's September 20-something. You'll have to look at the FlowShala website to figure it out. I have too many dates in my head. And then we have, I believe, a November one that's going to be on the list. And we have finishing the location for the January Thailand seminar, which will be a 5-day seminar. Me and Summer are still discussing what format that will be. And we have also been discussing since last week, people asked for a club certification. So I sat down and I've thought a lot about this the last couple of days, and I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a club certification. And right now, the rough format overview is going to be 3 different levels of heavy club swinging certification. Each one will be a 2-day for now, but we have to do all the mapping and plan out the time requirements for each level. And because I would like to eventually have it be 2 days for level 1, and then in 6 months open it up for level 2, which would be an additional 2 days. And then I would like to have a level 3 where it is an additional 2 days. So the final version of this will be a 6-day thing. And at 8 to 9 hours a day, I think we can cover most of the basics very, very well. And then I was thinking we should also do a kettlebell certification as well. And I would like to follow the same general format. I would like to follow level 1, level 2, level 3 for 2 days each one. I think that that would be a very good idea and a way to break it up in such a way that people can absorb the information. I would like to cover in that all of our basic coaching techniques, but more important than that, I would like to cover the why and the how to train. Anybody who watches this channel should know probably my thoughts on that topic very well already, the why and the how of how to train. But we want to make sure that people can do it, think about it, understand it, and then articulate it in the shortest possible period of time. The Thailand seminar, I think, will be really fun. We're talking about doing the 5-day immersion there, and I think what I would like to do is continue with staff as part of it, just because it's really fun. And it's a very good experience for people to have combined with other types, combined with something like steel mace vinyasa, which is mace, and heavy club swinging. But I would also like to introduce getting over obstacles, vaulting, or the use of jumping with the aid of the hands. But I would like to do it in a way that nobody else has ever done it, that I've ever seen, which is doing it with stuff in your hands. So the vaulting program, I wrote it several years ago when I was working on a movie in London, specifically about jumping over the London height traffic barriers that are on the edge of roads in like Soho. I believe it's 42 inches. It's just under my elbow height, and I'm going to try to finish that product and have it out so that people could pre-train before Thailand, just so that it's not completely brand new to people when they get to that situation, because it is a little bit hard on most people when they start doing that the first time. It's usually hard on people's brain, but that's the thing. All the programs we write are about getting people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. So that was a good 5-minute intro here. Let's start answering some questions. Grant Gardner, Lord of the Discord. To help Mark see questions better, please format them. Yes, label question at the top of the question. That would be excellent. Losing my stuff. Eric Parker just started the 15-pound single arm club yesterday. Thank you. Excellent statement. 15 pounds is something that every adult male should be able to do blindfolded. I really want people to repeat single arm training until they get to the 25. It usually takes people 2 to 3 years to do it effectively, allowing their joints and their tendons enough time to adapt. Because that's really the limiting factor for most people, is the integrity of the shoulder joint, the elbow joint, and the wrist joint. And usually we want the cycles to be longer for single arm than they are for other things, because there's so much micro load. And we need to get the core and the lower back to fire and be mobile as well in the same way. So congratulations, Eric, on starting your 15-pound journey with the single arm club. I spent 2 years with the 15-pounder, but back then there was no like clear laid out path, so I had to do a lot of messing around and getting her to figure it out. But now it's well understood. Now we can now it's all laid out. Grin, Grinn. Would love an update on the Volpez training club that I got. Is it holding up well? Yes, it is holding up well. It is designed and cut from the same stuff as like cold steel training staffs. It's not as thick. I think it's 3/4 thick, but it's polypropylene, which is basically indestructible plastic, and thus far I have not been able to hurt it at all. The edges of it, because it's cut out of a flat sheet, the edges are rounded, so it has more of a rectangular handle shape, but thus far I find it to be very useful for attack defend drills. And I just like doing attack defend drills with a bunch of different stuff. Staff, baseball bat, Harley Quinn drills as we call them, machetes, because it's the only commonly done type of sword fighting on the planet. And then I like these other shaped clubs that are historically based. Like one of my favorite shapes is a gun stock war club from history. Fascinating idea, and the angles create an insane amount of force. So learning to do attack defend drills with that stuff simply expands the way that your mind works and changes the way you think about levers. Every time you change the implement, you change the way you think about the implements themselves, and you get better and better at just the pure basics. So yes, the Volpez, I'm saying that name wrong. I know that somebody pointed out to me that I'm saying that name wrong, but I don't remember the correct way, is holding up extremely well. I have not put it up against machetes yet, because I haven't had anybody in Ohio to do machetes with me. Amazingly, it's very hard to get people to show up to swing machetes at your head and to have machetes swung at their head. Very difficult to do, but it's holding up to everything else. Adam B. Crafter says we have much better signal. Adam was just at our training, did excellent. You could tell that he had some Japanese martial arts in the stance and the way he stands. So when I start a seminar, I take each person and work with them individually, and I can start picking out who's done what martial art, or who's a dancer, or what people's athletic background is, usually in about 3 to 4 minutes, just from the way that they move their hands. And I'm always watching people's hands and their feet, and you can usually pick it out. So he had done some Japanese martial arts, and you could tell immediately because he has a different type of grip in his hand. Tight at the bottom, ice cream cone grip, looser at the top. But that will beat you up with certain types of training. It causes your hand to tear right in the palm of the thumb pad with the repeated high impact. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just different. But he did excellent at the seminar. Fantastic work. Randy Allen, hello from Arizona. Hello, Arizona. Mark Artigas Val. Mark Artigas Val. Cool, great name. 2 questions about sexiness. This is going to be a good one. Does quadruped movement, cat, crab, really improve your sexiness? Absolutely. I'm looking for a no conventional approach apart from kettlebell, heavy club to reach a balanced, sexy body. Mark Artigas Val. Absolutely. Quadruped walking can provide an insane amount of load. Will you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger? Absolutely not. You will look like Tarzan. Very different types of bodies. Your chest will not get super wide, but you will start to look more like a circus hand balancer than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Cat crawl itself is an insane way to develop the total body. So cat crawl, think straight arms. Your legs are bent at 90 degrees, knees stay 1 inch off the ground. It is different from a bear crawl. Bear crawl has less sexiness overall. I use bear crawl more for mobility and hamstring warm-up. Cat crawl loads its cross-body stabilization all the time. So if you go to Pilates and you do any of their 4 points down hands and knee drills, they're all a non-moving version of cat crawl. If you want to get sexier doing cat crawl, change the environment over which you are crawling and alter the time under tension. When I get back to LA, I would like to next week go to one of my original training locations that I trained at for years, where they have like a five-story outside concrete staircase. And I used to cat crawl down that every day, and you would do sets. So one day you would do 3, you would crawl down, walk back up very hard after the crawl down, and then you would do 4, you would go to 10, and then you would start it over. And that provided a cycling wave. But cat crawl is an incredible way to build upper body development, especially if you put it on a downward slope. If you get to the point where you can cat crawl up a slope with your head still down, so backwards, that is an insane upper body workout, insane upper body core workout. There's no way out of it. It is a sexy developer. It's just most people don't have access to a staircase like that. You can do it like in buildings and stuff, but because like if you're inside of like an apartment building, also something I've done, you go down, you get a little break on the flat where it turns from side to side. So it tends to lower the overall sexiness because you get out of high load tension for a brief period of time. The longer the staircase, the better it works. But you can just do it on level ground and go for time. Do cat crawl for 4 minutes. It's brutal. I have heard of people doing cat crawl for miles. At that point, it becomes more pure endurance. So I tend to keep it as like 10 minutes and under, but 90-second sets tend to be really good for developing muscle or a sexy frame with cat crawl and crab crawl. Excellent question. What was the first part of that question? So yes. Okay, so there's this. When training for sexiness with medium to low weight or even body weight, would you recommend a program using long cycles, or would you use a different approach? So if you're training for sexiness, so long cycle is about efficiency. Long cycle is not about sexiness. It is about enduring longest, which is not in itself a sexy strategy, right? Marathon runners are not sexy as sexy as sprinters. Sprinters, higher output of energy in a shorter period of time. So I think of long cycle. If you had very heavy weights, you could do long cycle the same way it would be with Olympic. But if you have medium to light weights, then you would want to create more tension and more angles. So I would, if you have a short period of time to develop a sexy physique with medium to light weights, long cycle is probably not the way to do it. You would work more on more angles, half kneeling presses, things that force you to do a pure press so that you can create more tension, so that you can create more tone. There are a bunch of different ways to think about that, but that is the shortest possible answer. You should be working on more complexity with light weights and creating more tension if you want more of a sexy output. If you were to combine body weight 2 days a week, any body weight programs, and you were to do like a Turkish get-up breakdown program of some type 2 days a week, you're going to get a sexy frame pretty quickly. The goal is to create a lot of abdominal load, and don't let it rest, right? Kettlebells are great at that, but cat crawl is incredible at that. Cat crawl is one of those things that everybody thinks is easy until they try to do it for 4 minutes, and then they realize it's super hard. You'll also see guys, you used to see guys, I don't see it anymore, but cat crawl along rails because the small object, they'd have to create more tension to stay on the rail. And they'd have to create an insane amount of tension. I haven't seen that stuff since like 2005, but was also a method for getting super sexy in a short period of time with no equipment. Mark Artigas Val, again, so here's the third part of this question. When training for sexiness, nope, that's the second part. Sorry, that was only a two-part question. Eric Parker, body exercise question. I sometimes have trouble with proprioception when doing exercise as I have loose skin from 100 pounds weight loss. Should I focus on feeling the movements in the correct muscles? Yes, you should always focus on feeling the movements in the correct muscle. If you have extra skin that's moving around, just think of that as extra load that's pulling you, so you're going to end up with better balance overall. For people who have lots of excess skin, at some point I do put them into something like hypertrophy training for the upper body after they do all of their club, their two-handed club, their kettlebell programs, and they start running through body weight programs. At a certain point, then we would put men into some type of upper body hypertrophy program just to make the upper part of their body bigger. That's a very specific thing that's extremely tailored to people who've lost a lot of weight. And usually we would do that with some type of incline bench to widen the top of their body. It's very simple. It's like one of the few aesthetic things that I will specifically program for people, unless they specifically request it, but that is a topic that can be talked about a lot more. Let's go to Johan N. There's a question about herniated disc and single arm heavy club. Johan N has a family member who's suffering from a herniated disc. Would single arm heavy club be helpful or destructive for her back? Super helpful. You just have to start at a low enough weight. If people have herniated discs, 100% club swinging is the way to help them out. You just can't start with a super heavy thing. It has to be lighter than you think it needs to be. That is the great thing about the ADEX Mace and club system, is you can start at 3.5, run a cycle, and you can start from way down below their pain threshold, depending on how long somebody has had a herniated disc, how much it has altered their movement patterns. You start with a super light weight and you run through it, and their body will heal itself through subtle movement, or as much as it can. depending on how much destruction has happened. But they will regain movement pattern, which is the main thing, and that reduces pain massively. So it's the same goal that we have normal athletes do. We just have our starting position, our starting point pushed way down to a really light weight. And then we have them do it 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how sore it's making them or how bad their movement patterns are. And then we ramp right up through. So we do the volume cycles, but we cut the density cycles to start them at light weights and bounce up. But if you start at a really light weight, they will definitely regain movement patterns. Their pain will most likely go down. I mean, unless there's no disc left there at all. That's the question for your doctor, but 100% restoring movement patterns and swinging weight, I've never seen it not help somebody, is the way I should put it. I've never seen a person with a herniated disc that it did not help. Maybe somebody it won't help, but I've never met one. Is there a date for the Thailand seminar? SeaTac. Yeah, we believe it's the first week of January, and that final date is being ironed out this week by Summer Huntington and Pana. Pana is the person who used to come to my aerial studio. She's an aerialist, and she's the one who has the facility. So we've been talking about this seminar for like over 2 years now. Pana told me about this location that she was building it. So we'll be like one of the first people to ever use this thing. So it was actually designed for aerial, but I'm not teaching aerial anymore, nor am I talking about it a bunch. But she's going to have, I think, 17 points for 17 different aerial rigs. It's going to be super cool. I'm very happy to be in on this idea. So think first week of January 2023. Michael Snellgrove, programming question. I am doing an ABC program with your intermediate kettlebell program, mill squat program, single arm club program. When the Get Up program comes out, how should I program it in? So ABC means you're doing A program twice a week, B program twice a week, C program twice a week. So that means like Monday A, Tuesday B, Wednesday C, start over, Thursday A, Friday B, Saturday C, Sunday off. So currently he's running intermediate kettlebell program. Intermediate kettlebell program from Strong and Fit is meant for kettlebells that might not have great handles, that might lay on the back of your wrist or something weird like that. He's running that twice a week. And that has multiple levels that you can run up through because we're always working on movement complexity. If we're not going up in weight, then he's doing the mill squat program, which has all your fundamentals of rotation and squats put together, and then single arm club on 2 other days of the week. So that's an overall very good movement education program that's going to solve a lot of problems very easily. The Turkish Get Up program is going to come out. He wants to know how we should put that in there. You could drop any of the programs for now. Whichever one is making you the most tired, you would pull out one of them, A, B, or C, and insert the Turkish Get Up program in there. So now you would essentially have an A, B, C, D, but you would drop it and it would become A, B, D. A, B, D. And then you could drop A and you could go back to doing B, C, D, B, C, D, and then you could drop C and you could do D, A, B, D, A, B. You could cycle them like once every 3 months. Drop one of the programs out and keep your numbers and your recorded data, and then 3 months later introduce it back in and drop another one out. This would just allow you to keep working on a bunch of stuff and a bunch of ideas, but not get super bored. So you throw in that kicker 2 days a week, an entirely new program, makes everything feel fresh, makes it more likely that you are going to continue to do your training so that you can get what you want out of training. So you just drop one of those right now, and you could pick whichever one you need to drop. The Turkish Get Up program is a lot of presses and half kneeling stuff, and it's really designed for 24K and under. You could push it to 32K, but it would be real rough. It gets real rough above 24K for the majority of the population. So pick. Whichever one you're getting the most tired of, drop that one. As find another question. Question from Tyson Henry. Did I buy the Belleville Mini Mill black boot, the TR105 black? No, I only wear the tans because I need a little contrast. I wear black all the time. If I were to wear black moccasin-like shoes with black jeans and black t-shirt, I think I'd look super weird. I wish Belleville made these in some contrasting colors. I wish they made tan with green sides or green with tan sides or black with tan sides or something, or like tan with blue sides, but they don't. So I'm stuck with what I got. So I don't have the black. I just don't think they would look good with my outfit, honestly. Kurt Melby, question. He went from 3 to 4 days a week to 6 days a week of training and recently started getting inside elbow pain. Your elbow forearm stretches seem to be helping. Do I need to decrease training days? You might need to decrease training days, or you might need to decrease load on some of your stuff to let your elbows catch up. If you're not used to training 6 days a week, you can go up in weight, but you have to only do it like 2 days a week. Some of your days a week need to be intentionally super light days so that you're moving and you're maintaining your habit of training, but you do have to start building in some light days if you're not used to that much load.
And you don't have a seat, just sit tight. I'll call you by last
Hold
and
on.
give you a seat assignment.
Sorry, loud airport noises. Yeah, you're going to have to pick something to make it super light and keep moving on those days, but allow your body time to figure out how to adapt faster. Adaptation is its own athletic skill, and it takes people years to learn how to train 6 days a week without dying. And that's accomplished through heavy light cycles. All right, should be right in here. Any tips on building up the skin for kettlebell cleans? My hands are a bit tender. Yeah, it's annoying. You just have to keep doing more of them. I know it's terrible advice. That's what. Hold on.
Because it's gonna be later than 5:45 now. Your new time.
Wow, it's super annoying. That's why we cycle between kettlebells and heavy clubs and Mace, because they're different types of stress on the hands. If you try to just pure heavy kettlebell lift every day, like I used to do, your hands will fall apart. You need to change the force. So I like to think kettlebells pull against the grip, so that's one form of shearing strength, of shearing force on your skin. Your skin has to get stronger and adapt to that direction of shear. So in the beginning, we like to have clubs and kettlebells because kettlebell pulls through your grip, and that's a different direction of shear than the kettlebell. So you can continue to train while getting your hands and your skin stronger and your joints stronger and everything else without having your hands rip. If your hands rip, you're usually down for about 10 days. But there is no really way to shortcut your hands getting stronger because your skin is an organ. My God, my hands look monstrous. But it takes years of training to build up that shear force on the hands. Same thing would be true if you Olympic lift. The same thing is true if you do rings. The same thing is true if you do circus. The limiting factor is almost always the hands. And there's really no way to get around it other than having that heavy light cycle. The heavy light cycle is supposed to be there so that some days you can really stress your hands and the other days you change the direction of shear and go to maybe a lighter weight. It takes a long time. The first 5 years, my hands were a train wreck. They bled all the time because nobody was talking about heavy light the same way back then.
Once again, we're going to Phoenix on flight 932, and if you don't have a seat assignment, please have a seat. I'll call you by your last name and give you a seat. I'm trying to load
Boy, they really like to talk here.
and then I'll call you guys when I'm ready.
Okay, that's a very long sentence to say that it's delayed. We're talking about hands. The first 5 years of my training, like I was trying to do way too much. I was doing way too much circus. I was doing trapeze. I was doing silk. I was doing heavy club, and I was doing heavy kettlebell. in the 40K range, and my hands were just shredded all the time, and they were just like claws, and they were awful. So the best thing I ever did was drop the 40K kettlebell out of my training and focus on trapeze and club swinging for a long time. It allowed me enough time for my hands to not tear, and then they actually got stronger. If your hands are tearing, they're not getting stronger, you're just making it worse, in my mind. But yeah, there's no way out of it. That's why a lot of the programs are very long. That's why single arm club training is extremely long. It's because it's your skin, your tendons, and your ligaments that are adapting. Your muscles will adapt much faster. Not all of them. Some of your small muscles in your hands take longer to adapt. But for the most part, we're trying to give your body time to make those things stronger. Let's find another question. Here we go. Carbage Mon. Question. I'm trying to start with 8X clubs, but they don't have the fat-handled clubs in stock. What do you think about starting with the arc instead? They have those with fat handles. Sure, start with an arc. My buddy Will from BJJ Fanatics, I sent him an arc and a bunch of weights, and he's running the mill squat program, and he's running it just fine. The main thing is that you're going to have to be more intelligent about holding the middle of the handle and not letting it go when you're doing your swings across the center, your inside circle, your outside circle, etc. Because the handle is long enough that most people could crush their toes if they don't pay attention to their hand. I just have faith that you will be smart enough to not crush your toes. So yeah, don't crush your toes. But yeah, definitely get an arc, the fat handle. I love the fat handle. I think they just put out an email about the Wildman super fat handle. I don't know what we're calling it now. I think it's the Wildman handle, but it's just a fatter handle. I tried to bring it up to the size of my favorite kettlebell grip. But those, I believe, are out as well. Or they should be. There's an email about them. I didn't read it, but people told me about it at the seminar this weekend. Patrick Sims. What other method of quadruped progression would weight vest also be a good way to progress instead of outing slope to the ground? Thank you. Yes. Weight vest is incredibly hard with bear crawl, quadruped movement, or backpack. Backpack, because it has a higher center of mass and it flips all over the place, is a crazy, crazy, crazy nightmare. It's very hard. But yeah, or you can control speed. You can set a metronome and control the cadence at which you're moving. Slow, fast, do different speeds on different days. And you can set a metronome on your phone and strap it to your chest. I have a Hill People Gear runner's bag that I strap to my chest if I'm doing something like that. So you can have your phone and your keys and all that other stuff and do things like quadruped movement for distance and still have a timer that lets you know when you're supposed to move your hands and your feet. The slower it is, it can get really awful. So also the distance between your hands. There's a lot of variables that you can control. In the beginning, it's usually just time under tension. It's usually just don't die. Stay down for 90 seconds to 4 minutes. But yes, you can totally add weight vest to that, and it gets real crazy real fast. Got some stuff on my face here from sweating so much in the seminars. My skin started to break down by the end of the seminars. That is something you should be aware of, how gross and sweaty the seminars are. One of the gentlemen from back east was going through 6 t-shirts a day, like 1 an hour, because you would like pull off a t-shirt, put one on, sweat through it, puddle on the ground, rip it off, put on a fresh one when we change between modalities. But yeah, it gets real gross. So my skin's breaking down on my face. It's breaking down on my neck too, just from having so much sweat running, just pouring down your face for 8 hours. Adam B. Crafter was at our seminar. Says he had an absolutely marvelous time at the seminar and promptly got compliments about improvement and his hip throw on the dojo on Tuesday. Excellent. Good. That's exactly what we like to hear. Question, Dan Ellis. Any exercises that I should do to counteract military PT? Absolutely. Mace 360s and all your mill pattern stuff. Military guys that I know focus on very specific things. You know, they have their push-ups, their pull-ups, their sit-ups, which are tested. I'm not sure how they're testing that stuff anymore, but then they're running and they're rucking. The rucking is the thing that really beats people up. And then the man carry, different versions of the military do different versions of the carry. I know, was it the Marines had 6 versions of carry? They had like 3 over the top and 3 low or something, 3 drags for a while, and that was really trashing people. It was a specific adaptation that they needed to get good at, but they didn't really prep people for it. And I know a lot of people who got washed out doing the body carry stuff because they didn't prepare people with cross-body stabilization beforehand. So I can name 3 guys from my hometown who ended up with spinal injuries just because of that, because they were not trained with cross-body stabilization and they were thrown right into pick up a 200-pound dude with all of his gear and his rifle and run with it. So anything with cross-body stabilization, heavy club swinging tends to do very good. Anything that swings across the center line tends to counteract the load from military stuff very well. So all of your mill squat program, all of your single arm club tends to help people in the military very, very, very much. Also, they tend to work out extremely hard when they're training, depending on who their PT guy is. Some guys have PT guys who aren't trying to murder them. A lot of guys have PT guys that just try to slaughterhouse them every day. So things like club and two-hand and single-hand club have a lower heart rate demand, which actually allows their heart time to recover while still getting work. So you can kill a lot of birds with one stone by learning club swinging for all your military applications. Make sure you're doing all of your hip cool down as well. So extend the spine, flex the spine, rotate the spine, hip flexor stretch like mad. And probably from the rucking under load, you should introduce at least 3 minutes of calf stretching for each calf each day at the end of training as the last thing, because you need to do your forward fold, open up the top of your hamstrings, decompress your lower back, and then that calf stretch at the end because of the amount of loaded walking that military guys do. I hope I answered that one succinctly. I know a lot of military guys and all the different things, and we're always talking about how they train. Like, some of it's very specific, some of it's very chaotic, and then the requirements that they actually have to do. And we're always talking about how to keep guys alive, because not always in the interest of the military. There, a lot of times, cool down is not emphasized as much as it probably should be across all branches. Some people do an extremely good job at it. Usually, the higher the tier, the better the programs are, because they are more interested in keeping those guys alive, because they put more money into making those guys do what they want to do, into training those guys. So, you know, guys who are like tier 1 guys, Green Berets and SEALs and stuff, they tend to have pretty well thought out cool down programs and stuff like that. But usually guys who are in their first contract or whatever, they tend not to get as good of training until they go up, and they tend not to have really good cool down training from what I have been told. There are many people with much better information on this topic, but those would be the things I would say. Evan Croshaw, Mace Club question. I love this identifier at the beginning, makes it so easy for me. What are the primary differences between 360s and 10 to 2s? 360s go one direction. They either go all clockwise for a unit of time and then all counterclockwise for a unit of time, and 10 to 2s go back and forth. In 10 to 2s, people tend not to come to completion, make the mace vertical. They tend to stop at a 10 angle and a 2 angle, whereas in a 360, you come to the 10 and you pass through to the 2 and you go to the other side, or you come into the 2, you pass to the 10 and you go. So they have slightly different wrist requirements. I always start people at 360s first and run them through 2 to 3 cycles before they go to something like 10 to 2s. The direction change with a long lever can be interesting for people if they've had shoulder injuries. So I like to over prep people for sure for that. So 360s, all one direction, crossing over smoothly from 10 to 2, which is its own wrist, elbow, and shoulder rotation. And then 10 to 2s, you're decelerating that action and going back out the other way. Continuous acceleration, deceleration, acceleration in 10 to 2s. Both excellent exercises you should definitely do a lot of. Everybody who does Mace should be able to do at least 10 minutes of 360s and 10 to 2s with at least a lightweight. That means 10 minutes nonstop. That means about 320 reps non-stop with the weight never coming down or stopping moving. Continuous breathing for 10 minutes. That's a base goal that everybody who does Mace should have. Stand up, don't put it down for 10 minutes, 320. Absolutely everybody should be able to do that, any age group. We can get you a lighter Mace if you're older, but that is what you need to work on, bare minimum. Let's continue down. Lakshmi Asuri. Lakshmi Asuri. Subcontinent name? Asuri? I'm saying the last name like it's Japanese, but I feel like it's a name from the subcontinent because Lakshmi does not have the phonetic structure of a Japanese name, although it has a sound like a Japanese name, but it does not have consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. But Asuri has a Japanese structure to the name. Reverse Turkish get up, reverse down to lunge. So Turkish get up, standing, step back, opposite leg to lunge. Back knee, quad hurts. Am I doing good amount of quad hip flexor stretches before the movement itself? Any other pointers here? Thanks and appreciate your videos. So that means tightness when he is stepping back, the long line from shoulder to knee, his quad is tight. So what that means is a couple of things. He says he's doing his stretches beforehand. The question I'm going to ask is he doing his stretches after? Also, if you're having trouble with that, you could isolate out the half kneeling position and do half kneeling clean and press from the half kneeling position. I have videos on that. Is that in any of my? That's in the Turkish Get Up program that's coming out. Sorry, let's wait for this announcement to finish. There we go. Also, what you can do is get into your half kneeling position and do your Mace 360s from that position because you will isolate one hip and it will stir like this. And when you do 10 to 2s, it will alternate. That hip will do this. And then you need to introduce some type of much more hardcore quad stretch. At the end of training, probably knee down, foot against the wall, push your hip back. It's a half kneeling with the rear leg bent up and shoved into a wall. We've made some videos on that, I think. Can't remember. But that would be the stuff you would need to do. It sounds like you have a lot of tightness in the front of your quad. Maybe there's adhesions or something. So I would first introduce the movement, half kneeling clean and press, half kneeling 360, half kneeling 10 to 2. Then I would introduce more stretching at the end, cool down, half kneeling, leg flexed up, push your hip towards the wall to extend the front of the quad. And if that doesn't work, then I would use a 3.5-inch hard physio spiky ball, and I would lay on it for 3 minutes and roll it up and down to crush. And you'll probably find a spot that hurts super bad in the front of your leg, top of the leg, front top of the leg, inside top of the leg, outside top of the leg, and I would repeat that until you find something that makes you scream, and then I would repeat that until you don't scream. Somebody donated money. Thank you, C-Boz, for donating. He's asking, how did I meet Summer Huntington? She seems very cool. She is very cool. I met Summer I don't know, it's got to be 12 years ago now, maybe longer, maybe 13. I'm losing all concept of time. I'm so old. But I met her way back when she was just doing heavy club swinging. She, I believe, was in school for her master's of kinesiology. She was always super into yoga, so she was like the best cuer at that type of stuff. And amazingly, really nobody's still ever done what Summer has done, which is create a functional version of yoga that's specifically designed to solve problems. So I met her a long time ago at a seminar and see her once a year for a couple of years, but every time you'd be like, man, that person knows what they're talking about, and they're answering questions well, and they're solving problems in a specific and methodical way. So I love Summer because she's been doing that. I think it was 2010, she created Kinesiology yoga, Kinesiology Club Bell yoga. And she traveled for like 5 to 7 years teaching that around the world. And I would go to her seminars when she was in California. They were absolutely savage and brutal, super sweaty nightmare messes, and everybody would leave there complete jello, shocked out of their mind. The amount of information she was throwing at you was incredible. I love that. I love instructors who are really getting at it, who do it, and who understand it, and who make it better every year. Sadly, she lost control of the copyright of the thing that she created. So she has since created her steel mace vinyasa with all of control so she can control her own intellectual property based on the foundation that she had built up before. And this version is better than even the version before. Like, she continues to innovate and just do incredible work. We worked out this morning at about 8:30 or 9. She coached me through one of her Metcons. And of course, it's not something I wrote, which means I'm not super good at it, which means I find it very frustrating, and that's the point. I have to do things as well because I have a bad leg, and I will write training for myself that avoids putting me in spots where I will have to use my VMO under that much rotation. So she wrote a program for me this morning that was just a VMO absolute nightmare. And my leg was shaking and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I took a couple of days off of working out after the seminar. And then, so we worked out, I think it was yesterday morning and this morning. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go back through and start doing her training in the morning. Because when I travel, I start to skip movement patterns subconsciously that I just don't want to do because they suck, they're annoying. So I'm going to go back through and do all of Summer's stuff again to work on my flexed knee rotation under load, which I have to do. Summer's a genius. I think I met her 12 years ago. No, but I don't remember when. Somewhere, some seminar. She's just been around for so long, I forgot. Let's continue on with some questions, comments. Randy Allen, what training modalities and programs would you recommend for HEMA, rapier, and small sword? Well, HEMA, rapier, and small sword, well, I would recommend something like steel mace vinyasa because of the complexity of the movement and the leg pattern movements are very close to that stuff, at least very close to all the stuff of that I've seen, depending on what source you're using for small sword, because there's different styles of small sword. And if you're in London, it's going to probably be different than somebody who's doing like French small sword. I believe they're slightly different. Postures are pretty similar. They're all pretty similar, but they have different strategies. But the leg patterns are very, very similar. Steel mace vinyasa would be incredible for something like small sword. And of course, single arm club training. The weight of a small sword is not heavy at all. What are you looking at? 1.5 pounds instead of like a standard 2.5 pounds for something like a type 14. So it's a lighter sword. for the most part. There's less overall metal in it, but you still need to overtrain for that. And you need to overtrain for that with complexity, with an extended arm. Your single arm training, just like everybody, go up in weight. And then something that works on side flag. I made a Mace video about this yesterday. It'll be out this week. But that side flag presentation position in Warrior 2 is small sword. That's small sword prep 101. So yeah, single arm club, two-handed club, pushing both of those things towards Warrior 1, Warrior 2 stance, which would be your small sword extended lunge position, or similar enough to it that it would have a lot of crossover, and steel mace vinyasa, because it has a lot of the very similar stepping patterns, cross stepping patterns, and lunge stepping patterns that you would find in those two things. What was it? It was small sword and something else. I missed the second part. Let me find it again. I'm still looking for it, guys. Okay, I lost it. I lost it. I don't know where it's at. I lost it. I don't know. It was a HEMA question. It was about small sword. I don't remember. Johan N. Are you aware of gymnastic bodies? GB with Chris Sommer? Oh yeah, I've heard of it. And what are they doing? If you are aware of them, how does their body weight training differ from your body weight programs? Well, for one, this is gymnastics. I like gymnastic bodies. I looked at a bunch of their stuff when I was in England. I think there's one gym that's like a gymnastics bodies gym. And I was like, man, I really want to go to that gym. If it was, nothing's actually in London. They're always like really far out. They say like London adjacent, but what they mean is 2 hours on the train away or something. Something that's so far away you can't possibly get to it around actually doing a job. But I love the stuff that they do. If I remember correctly, they do a bunch of stall bar stuff. And I think that any gym who has a good stall bar program is something you should definitely do. But I think the gym outside of London is the only place I've ever seen that had classes that had stall bars around the entire room. I would absolutely love to go to that gym and go through that training. Stall bars is the thing that I desperately need in my life. From years of martial arts and doing rope, I'm very closed. I don't have enough upper thoracic extension to do a lot of stuff very well. And I'm huge, so it's very hard for me to do upper thoracic extension stuff in most places, because stuff is not designed for a 6'1", 240-pound beast of a man with 37-inch arms. I really need a massive stall bar setup, but I would love to do their stall bar stuff. I have no idea how time efficient it is. I have no idea about their time under tension protocols. I don't know if they track data, but I would love to find out. I have heard of that dude. I have looked up his work. I just don't know about it. Stall bars are insanely expensive. Like my solution for stall bars would be to order a Rogue, 10 to 12 foot monster rack, and then put a Rogue stall bar on it. But where the hell am I going to put that? I couldn't even put that in my gym when I had a gym. It is so big, and it requires so much stuff to do. Like, you have to put it on the ground, drill through a concrete floor, put in your Blue Tech screws, down through it, stabilize the whole thing. It really works good with a monster rack, which is square. I put a stall bar on my wall in an attempt to do that, and my size and body weight ripped it right off the wall. And that was the best wooden stall bar I could find, but it was too small for me. Gymnasts are small ass people. Most gymnastics gyms don't even talk to people my size. But I think I would like to know if gymnastics body's good. I just have to get the equipment to support the idea. Love to do it. Brent Rank, pre-order 8X Clubs Wildman handle this Friday. August 5th, and availability September 15th per 8x email. See, it's coming out. So for everybody who was talking about handles, go ahead, buy the super fat Wildman handle. I like it better, but that's just me. I like, big handled stuff because I'm a big person, but that's up to everybody else. Eric Swindle, what is a good starting time for the Mace 360s, 10 and 2s, and reps per set to work up to 10 minutes? Million answers for that. I tend to start people on volume cycles, then run a density cycle, then go through 3 weights, then change it to 30 seconds each hand, then go to 1 minute each hand, build up to 10 minutes, and then I overshoot the mark and tend to build up to 14 to 16 minutes, and then go down and change my time under tension to 90 seconds. Fast, super fast answer. I just gave you guys 2 years of programming. Another question, do you think swings are snatches for cardio endurance? Maybe something else that doesn't involve running. I think swings and snatches for cardio endurance. Snatches are really hard on people, and people in the beginning for the first several years are just trying to survive snatches, and the heart rate's insanely high. So I tend to have people run volume cycles, and they start to adapt. I do it differently now than I did even 5 years ago, where then I would drop down to ultra light weights and start doing competition style sets, and just get people to hold on to light weights, but I would do it with a metronome, which is the way Valerie Fedorenko told me to do it like in 2008, but it requires a lot of weights to do it that way.
Please, so for those going to Phoenix on flight 932, this flight is going.
One moment.
You may look for volunteers.
Boy, they really can't stop talking here. We're just going to keep going. Snatches or swings? Both. Swings are the foundation of everything you do. Then clean and press is the foundation of your snatch. Snatch is very hard on most people in the beginning because it eats their hand up. The question is how strong are your hands, is which one's best for cardio. The easiest way to get people to do cardio with a kettlebell in the beginning is to do a shit ton of swings, and then to do a shit ton of clean and press, then do Turkish get-ups, then build up a couple of snatch cycles. But then it's to treat kettlebells as a metcon and start combining swings, clean, presses, and jerks in a bunch of different mathematical ways. And I like a 15-minute time frame. It's longer than 10 minutes. 15 minutes is, a 2-minute mile, kind of. But you can vary the rep count and that stuff every day in order to use it for cardio development. So cardio is based on what you need for cardio at this time. Everybody starts with swings because weightlifting cardio is not like normal cardio. It's a very different thing. It's a very different physiological response in the body over time. And then I have everybody go to snatches so that they can learn to operate their hand. So eventually they can get to pure cardio. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. The way that I just mentioned, combining your basics for 15 minutes. And then there's just 60-second sets. And then you'll see a lot of guys are mimicking like the Concept 2 time frames for like things like clean and jerk. And doing like a 4-minute set, 2-minute break, 3-minute set, 2-minute break, 2-minute set, break, 1 minute set, break. There's an infinite number of ways to do it. But the question is, which one are you going to survive? Which one are your hands going to survive and your abs going to survive? Snatch is obviously a more complete movement than swing. So the goal of the swing is to eventually to get you to the snatch. But the snatch can always go back down to a swing. And you could do 3 swings, 1 snatch, 2 swings, a clean, a snatch. And you can combine that in an infinite number of ways to create cardio. So the answer is get good at all your basic 6 movements and then combine them in a bunch of ways and learn not to put the weight down. And it will definitely be cardio. Ben Semish, what are your thoughts on Indian clubs? I love Indian clubs. I don't see anybody teaching them well. Who's teaching Indian clubs in a time-controlled, progressive way? I can't think of anybody. If somebody, I would love to do that myself. I would love to create a whole series where I do that, but I would have to work on that. and it would be a whole nother project. I have that slated for sometime next year. Most people teach clubs the same way they teach like fire dancing or poi. There's no math to it, which makes it very hard for people to learn to succeed at. I think it would be very good to take it, start at the basics, do time under tension protocols, and build up a series of programs. I write 15 programs that are time under tension to maximize club training. Now that I've put this out there, somebody will probably do it. But I love Indian clubs. The complexity is great because you can start with super light weights and have just very gently loaded, essentially, mobility and brain training. So Indian clubs are much higher in complexity than something like steel mace or heavy club. Heavy club, you tend to be at an intermediate level of complexity because you're going way up in weight. Fancy Indian club swinging, I think, has an advantage over something like Mace flow, because in Mace flow you have hand changes, which allows you to escape the need to just get really strong hands. Indian clubs does not have that escape. You have to hold on the entire time. If you pick up Indian clubs, even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pound weights, and you don't put it down for 20 or 30 minutes, then your hand had to learn to endure that entire time. So I think Indian clubs does fill a very unique realm, and I think that it would be an absolutely fantastic program that I would love to lay out for people who are recovering from injury, people who have been bedridden, recovering from transplants, people who've been in the hospital for 5 to 6 weeks and been sitting down or laying down for long periods of time. You could start them learning these movement patterns with just half-pound sticks and then build up a scientific program for that and build them up to, over the course of 2 to 3 years, to 5 pounds. But fancy Indian club swinging is one of the original forms of exercise on the planet, and it will fix posture like mad. Absolutely crazy. The structural endurance, the structural muscle endurance that it develops. Love Indian clubs. I think it's fascinating. There's such a broad history of it, but I just haven't seen anybody isolate it down into a understandable, trackable, followable program yet. I'm sure somebody will do it now that I've said it, but that's good. That's just going to make the world a better place. I'm going to do it when I get a chance. After I finish my basic 6 heavy club programs, get out the kettlebell programs, the heavy club programs, and a bunch of steel mace programs, we're going to work on the Indian club program because it is such a viable idea. I think it's fascinating. All right, people are saying, all right, let's find another question here. Will Everville, this is a weird, interesting question that I'm probably going to think about for a week. Any tips on manipulating heart rate between kettlebells and clubs as far as targets or benchmarks to look for in both modalities? It's really hard to say that because, so it's really hard to set heart rate goals for something like kettlebells and clubs because somebody's hands are always going to fail before their heart usually gives out. That's almost always true. Almost nobody is stronger physically than their heart is for these things. Granted, heart rate gets absolutely kicking in kettlebell training. If there's anything harder on the heart in a shorter period of time, it's like dead sprints away from a tiger. Basic snatch training is incredibly hard on the heart with kettlebells. For the most part, that's why we do EMOMs in the beginning. Super high heart rate, short break, let it come down a little bit. Super high heart rate, short, come down. For the most part, people can't get to the point where they can really control their heart rate. They can track their heart rate, but controlling their heart rate with kettlebells is extremely hard for people, usually in the first 5 years. because they do not have the physical hand strength or technique in their entire body to support heart rate control. Really good competition guys who've been in for several years can shoot for heart rate goals, but for the most part, heart rate tends to take care of itself, and your body limits you, and then your heart and your body tend to adapt together. That's one of the brilliant things about kettlebells and clubs is it's incredibly hard to overwork because something will fail usually before your heart does. So heart rate goals in the beginning: stay alive, don't pass out, which I know is a terrible answer, and people would like a much more specific like heart rate zone answer. But for the most part, there's super hard to predict that in the beginning. For the most part, in the beginning, we want people to go up in weight, and we have their breaks. That's like clean and press program has 1 minute break periods to let the heart rate come crashing down, because people's heart rate gets incredibly high. We need to let it come down, and then we would look for an average heart rate to be in the correct zone. But for the most part, we care more about getting through the weights than we do about the heart rate in the beginning, at least in the first 5 years. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I'm going to think about that all week and see if I can find a better way to articulate it, and maybe we'll talk about it again next week. Let's find another question. Dan Ellis, question: is there a point with volume cycles with push-ups where one should transition into time under tension, or switch from EMOM to every 2 minutes on the 2 minutes? Absolutely, right? There's always a point that you can jump every program. I provided people with a bunch of beginning ideas on how to start getting good at things, but you can always jump to other types of training once you have a solid foundation and you're holding good technique. And then there are a massive number of push-up programs out there. My problem with push-up programs is that nobody ever just does a volume cycle in the beginning to make sure people can actually do push-ups. You'll see a lot of like, just do 25, and people can't do, and so they do 25 shitty ones instead of 5 good ones like they should. Time under tension with push-ups is incredibly hard, because for the most part, people could do 30 push-ups in 30 seconds when they're good. 30 crisp, clean, beautiful push-ups in 30 seconds. So when people say that they're going to do 90 seconds of push-ups, I am super skeptical of that person immediately, because that would mean that they would have to hold technique the entire way through. Usually people break down somewhere in there. And if you keep breaking down in your training, then you're training yourself to fail, not to succeed. So I like to keep things in a range where I know that they can have good technique. Granted, a test is different from training. So you'll see military guys do like a 2-minute push-up test or whatever, but that is a test. That is not training. They're different things. But there are very many advanced time under tension protocols out there for push-ups. But usually, people should do volume cycles and then a density cycle and then start it over, and probably add weight, add a weight vest, add plates, add a backpack, and start that program over again and get better at your fundamental pure, crisp, clean, pure techniques. We can talk about that one forever too. Let's look for something else. Single arm club question. Nicholas Desperez. Using the 8X club system, what should the weight difference be between light and heavy days? When I move up in weight, should I adjust both days in relation to each other? So because it's 8X, I would say make the difference between your light and heavy days 1.25 or 2.5 pounds, and have them be on wildly different math. One cycle should end and it should go up in weight before the other cycle finishes. So they should finish on their own cycle. Your light day is on its own plan, Your heavy day is on its own plan. The smaller the distance between your light and your heavy cycles, the more likely you are to do more cycles, the more likely you are to not hurt yourself, the more likely you are to get more experience, the better your overall total outcome. So 2.5 pounds, for a lot of very light frame people, 1.25 pounds. That was always the problem with other club companies. The 5-pound jumps just annihilated people when they're trying to work on something like single arm technique. Jumping from the 15 to the 20, even for full-size dudes, can be extremely hard on their elbows. So the smaller the jump, the better. The more likely you are to adapt in the inside of your joints, the better your outcome will be. The less likely you are to have downtime due to overuse or injury. Michael Webb, have you ever done the nerd math on what forces are actually being executed throughout the shoulder, say when you swing a 20-pound club, for example, at a usual velocity? A couple of things here. You have to define usual velocity. So, are we talking on a metronome? Are we talking with our, 100 reps on each side, 200 total reps in 7.5 minutes? Yeah, you can do the math on that. The problem with the math on that is the length of the lever arm changes between each individual person. So I have extremely long arms. I wear a 37-inch sleeve, so the amount of force that the 20-pound club is producing through a swing is different than somebody with a 32-inch sleeve. That also has to do with the length of their femurs. So you can do a rough calculation, the same way you would do in physics, where you assume a cow is a circle for wind resistance issues or something that you can easily control. The way that there were some studies 10 years ago where people were putting club swingers on force production tables, and as they swung the weight, it would calculate the force that was being transferred through their feet to the table. People did that, so pure how much force is being exerted down through the skeleton at one point of the movement. But the swing itself, the club changes weight as it swings based on the length of the lever arm. So you can do some rough calculations. And if you go to the weightlifting doc on Instagram, he's a guy who does a lot of marathon kettlebell times and marathon club times. He did a whole thing where he did the math on different clubs and assumed a couple of things. You can assume a constant rate of speed, assume a constant length of the bones in the arm, and then based on the different centers of mass of different clubs from different manufacturers, he did some nerd math on that force production. So yes, I've done it, other people have done it. Is it super important for people to understand at what point it weighs the most and the least and how much is that happening? I don't think so. I think that just judging the number of reps gives you a good overall approximation of the speed and the time. The same thing is true of kettlebelling, same thing is true of Olympic lifting. If you weigh less and you lift a bigger weight, you're actually doing much more work than, so if you took a lighter athlete, 10 pound, even a 10 pound difference between a light and a heavy athlete and you had them lift the same weight, the only thing you can really judge on is the weight itself. There are other ways to judge it, like things like kettlebell competition take the weight of the athlete, the age of the athlete, the weight of the kettlebell, and the speed at which they move, and put it into a giant mathematical grid to calculate who's the best based on body weight and speed in kettlebell. So there's all kinds of strategy that people do to figure out how to game the system. Do they use a lighter weight and go faster? Do they use a heavier weight and go faster? Or use a heavier weight and go slower in order to maximize their points? You can do a bunch of nerd math on that, but because the movements are so different, you would have to do the math for inside circle. The math would be different for outside circle, shield cast, near side pullover, alternating 180. Each one of those, you could describe the movement of the club through a mathematical equation and then do the speed and then figure out how much it weighs at each individual point. But really the only point that it matters is usually at the catch. Yeah, you can do the math. You can do the math. I've done the math. Other people have done the math. It's just crazy math where you usually have to make a lot of assumptions to consider something to be constant to get a useful, meaningful number of output, specific number denoted as output. I would love to see some people who have access to university athletic testing machines actually do studies on this topic. Because there's a lot of research done on kinesiology, and almost none of it is done on anything I consider to be useful. Most of the studies I see in kinesiology are just horrifying me to such an extent. Like taking overweight people and having them do push-ups or something, and then trying to figure out. They measure a bunch of stuff that I think is stupid and useless, and I don't think that they're looking at any of it properly. I do think it would be awesome to see somebody do a full university level study with 100 people or 1,000 people to do it. But thus far, I haven't seen any studies with a high enough population or with a good enough setup to do it. Like somebody would really need to go and do this series of tests over the course of 10 years. And it would take somebody in a kinesiology department in a university who has access to all the equipment and a large student body population, and then run a series of tests and change one variable each new time they did it. But each test would have to be 6 months to a year long, so it would take years to do. I would love to see it done. I don't know if anybody's going to do it. It's much easier to do tests on Olympic lifting than it is on club swinging. I know the Russians did a ton of tests on competition style kettlebells, but I have no idea where any of that data went or is. I can talk about that topic forever too. Sorry guys, that didn't make any sense. It made sense to me. Sai Singh's boss. The Pa Lavando people make an Indian club program, but he doesn't know what's in it. I don't know what's in it either. I know that there are programs out there. All the ones that I've seen have been so annoying and horribly designed that it has stopped me from looking at future programs. I saw some a couple years ago and they were so atrocious I just couldn't even look at it. It was horrible coaching, bad movement patterns, no progression. Man, she loves to talk. I drunk on O'Doul's book questions. Greetings from Golden, Colorado. What are 3 to 5 of your favorite non-fiction books? Books that improve your life in any fashion. I would have to think about that a lot. 3 to 5 of your favorite non-fiction books. I mean, I would go with the classics of religion and philosophy. You have to know about the Bible. She's killing me here. 16 volunteers. No. Boy, they oversold that flight like mad. Thank God it's not mine. Books. Let's figure out if she's going to stop talking first. Hold on.
We don't want to delay you guys more than this, so if you don't need that carry on, please make sure you come and see us before we start boarding so that we can tap them for you.
Okay, we're just going to talk about this. Bible, number one. You absolutely need to know about the origins of Western civilization. That means that you need to know the Torah. You need to understand the Bible. Then you need to probably understand the Quran and its evolution and separation of thought between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. You should know the Analects of Confucius. You should definitely read the Bhagavad Gita. I'm blanking on my favorite Zen book. You should definitely understand Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path. Those are my favorite non-fiction books. For the most part, I like fiction books, or I read about philosophy or history. And I think it's important to study all of those things. I think that everybody should be doing some type of weekly study on history and how it pertains to history. The development of Western civilization as it retains through biblical ideas into the Renaissance and all that other stuff. It's hard to understand that if you don't have a knowledge of the base texts that exist. So, Torah, Bible, The Quran, you should know about all of those. You should know how they differ for sure and why they differ and what about them differs. You should know about Buddhism as a core fundamental idea. It is one of the ideas that shaped all of human history. Early Christianity and Buddhism are incredibly similar.
Looking for Teresa Gold.
You should know the Bhagavad Gita, or at least the important parts of the Bhagavad Gita, and you should know the Analects of Confucius for sure. Maybe also the Tao Te Ching. Those are, your standards. Everybody needs to know about those in order to be a good member of society and figure out why different cultures do different things. So those are all good ideas. I'll talk about fiction books forever too. My favorite fiction author, S.M. Stirling, Dies the Fire. It's probably one of my favorite series of books. I never finished it. I got to book 9 or whatever. But then you start waiting for them to come out. But S.M. Stirling, I always thought was a fantastic author. He did some really great work. What was it? Stone Dogs, alternate timeline history stuff, where they assumed that something in history had been different and then imagined outcomes based on that. Obviously, I am a sci-fi nerd, and I love to read sci-fi short stories. One of the most influential sci-fi novels I ever read, I think 1976, Nebula Winter, The Mote in God's Eye. Clutch. Incredible book, I think, that very much describes the history of humanity by making it about somebody else. That book is set in a future where humans have spread out throughout the galaxy. For some reason, they're all wearing kilts in space, which is a little bit weird. They find one section of the galaxy they can't get into because of gravimetric anomalies. They finally figure out how to get through. They find the only other alien civilization they've ever encountered on the other side. And that alien civilization has been trapped in their own solar system for their history, and their civilization rises and falls in a predictable cycle, and the cycle is shorter every time it rises and falls. So it rises and then it falls, and then there's a big gap of Stone Age before it re-ramps. And over time, the period between that gets closer. I personally think that that's what's happened to Earth. I believe that humans have been the same for 200,000 years, and our recorded history is only 5,000 years. I find it very hard to believe that there's 195,000 years of people just not doing anything. I believe that we definitely rose and fell and had different types and levels of technology for the last several thousand years. If you want to know more about that stuff, look up Randall Carlson, probably my favorite guy to listen to on this topic. And that has a lot to do with the end of the last ice age, and the floods that are in every myth and every culture on the planet, and how that all lines up to be about, 11,800 years ago, 12,400 to 11,800 years ago? Am I getting that right? I'm off a little bit on that. But yeah, we could talk about books forever. I love books. I read a lot of books when I was in high school. I used to read 2 novels a week. And that was the only thing that kept me sane. I lived in the middle of nowhere, had 1 TV station and 1 radio station, and read books. And I just read novels and novels and novels and novels over and over and over again, because you used to go to the store. You could go to, a Hallmark store, a drugstore, and you could pick up novels, and you would just read through novels and novels and novels. And that's how was my first exposure to the world, and the reason you needed to have critical thinking and all that other stuff. Steve Blackshaw, 2-handed club question. Is there a difference in grip pressure between the bottom and top hand? Is a 2-hand club like single-hand club with just an anchor hand on the top to promote rotation? The anchor hand is actually, the top hand is the important hand in 2-hand club. You guys are killing me. Yes, there's a difference in pressure. The top hand is the important hand in 2-handed club. Eventually you take away the bottom hand and it just turns into single arm club. The bottom hand is your support hand. The top hand is the dominant hand. Therefore, they will have to share grip in order to move around your body. Your goal is to keep both hands on during two-hand club and rotate far enough that your elbows lock out. That's the one thing I look at, like in the seminar we did this weekend. Everybody's doing inside circles and outside circles. I'm looking at the bottom hand elbow on everybody in the room. If that elbow is not locked, they have not rotated far enough. The grip pressure is different. Top hand is the most important one. It will exert the greatest amount of force. As the club gets heavier, the bottom hand is required to do a lot more work. You get up into the 60-pound range on club, that bottom hand is also doing a lot of work. So great question. Thank you, Steve Blackshaw. Yes, excellent question. Top hand is doing the majority of work. Eventually you can get rid of the bottom hand if you can, if it's not super heavy. Question from Just Paul. Just Paul. Okay. How did I get into training? Question from Paul. How did I get into training? I got into training very, very young. I lived on an equestrian therapy horse farm. My mother was an equestrian instructor, and she coached eventing. Poor people coaching eventing is hilarious. That's the only way that poor people can afford eventing. Eventing is three events, super expensive, super hard to do. So she worked as a coach so that she could afford to do those things. And then she coached handicapped people in riding as well. Equestrian therapy is what it's called. So I was exposed to training at a very young age. And then I got into martial arts when I was young because I always wanted to be a Ninja Turtle, or I wanted to do what all the cool people in the books did that I used to read all the time because I didn't have TV or movies or anything. And so I got into martial arts in like 6th grade and was teaching by the time I was in 10th grade. You had to do 500 hours of instruction to get your brown belt, so you had to go and you had to instruct. And they worked through it, and you worked through coaching and everything else. And then I got out to USC, and I studied biochemical engineering, and I always worked out in the gym, and I went to Kung Fu in Koreatown and worked my way through that entire body of knowledge. I had a friend, and she was studying personal training at USC, and I would work out with her at the gym. And she was making $75 an hour at 19, and I was making $12 an hour working in an office doing construction project management. And I thought, wow, this is bullshit. And then they got me into engineering economics, which is a required course. And they basically told me that I should make more money for less time. And the way that I decided to do that was not through pure engineering after I got out of school and stopped doing research and everything, but through doing training. I wanted to be able to help people. I wanted to do what my mom did. I wanted to improve people's lives. And that's how I got into training. And I wanted to make more money per hour and help more people. Being trapped in a room doing research for Dutch Shell Oil International or somebody in a basement for 12 hours a day is not the most exciting way to live life. Training is an interesting thing because you get to meet new people. They have a bunch of problems. They have different lives. You go different places. You find different solutions to their problems. So that's how I got into training. And I've been doing it ever since. Let's see here. Let's just get in one more. We're at 88 minutes here, and my flight's eventually going to leave. So I need to figure out what I need to do over here. Let's get one more in. Here's something from Clive James. A few years ago, there was a fad for vibration training, either with a manual flexi bar or mechanical plate training. Any thoughts on whether or not this has value? I think vibration training has tons of value. I think that big vibration plates are awesome, specifically as a recovery device after very hard training. There are breathing techniques and what are called chugging techniques, shaking techniques, that high-level athletes use to get rid of stress in the body and to create relaxation. think creating more relaxation allows people to create more speed. So Pavel had a book on this 15, 20 years ago, Fast and Loose, which kind of hits on that idea. You have to create an incredible amount of tension at the point of impact, but you have to create, in order to create speed, you have to create relaxation. Vibration training does help people learn to relax certain muscles in the body. A lot of problems that people have in their health are because they create so much tension and they don't get rid of it, right? That's tightness in the hips or whatever. People adapt to a sitting position, the tightness stays and it doesn't get relaxation. So in cool down, the point of cool down is to create relaxation after creating a bunch of tension. So you warm up, you mobilize all the joints of the body, you create tension through swinging weight or lifting weight, kettlebells, clubs, barbells, cable machines, med balls. You create tension through movement patterns, and then you decompress that tension at the end of training. I like to do it, the cheapest possible, easiest way to do it is by holding a position for 2 to 3 minutes and allowing your body to get rid of stress. Vibration training is another way that helps people get rid of stress. You can shake muscles. You will see this done at physiotherapy, and they'll do massage, can be a version of shaking muscles to get them. But like a vibration table, I think can be an absolutely fantastic thing, especially for recovery. You stand on it, it shakes your whole body, it shakes your lymphatic system, it moves things around inside your body. You'll feel stuff inside your skull shaking, and set it for 2 to 3 minutes and let it shake out tension in your body so that you can recover faster so you can train more. Training on top of a power plate is an awesome idea. It just tends to be really hard to do because they tend to shove the power plates into weird parts of the gym where you can't do a lot of stuff. So standing on a power plate and doing curls, I don't know if that's a great idea because I don't think curls are a great idea. I think curls are a fun idea. Are they an idea that's going to affect your metabolism or make you move better? Probably not. Will they make your arms look better in t-shirts? Absolutely. So does doing bicep curls on a power plate, is it awesome? I don't know. I think it's a bunch of good ideas shoved together, and I think that it probably has some merit, but I'm not really sure if it does what they say it does. Vibration itself, very beneficial. Doing conventional lifting exercises on a power plate, I don't know. Maybe doing Mace 360s on top of it would be an interesting idea. Is it necessary? No. I think that you should probably use vibration as recovery for the most part. That was fun. Let's do one more. Here we go. Rolling hazards, jiu-jitsu question, just because it's super fun. What exercise should you program for a jiu-jitsu athlete for explosiveness? Jiu-jitsu athlete and explosiveness, I'm assuming that you're talking about like doing like a double knee takedown, because that's where explosiveness really goes in BJJ. It can go a lot of places, but I'm going to think about it from that perspective. The same way you would think about takedowns in Greco-Roman wrestling. I would definitely start with half kneeling position, and then half kneeling position, drive lead leg forward to work on the mobility of that knee to go into that second step to get the takedown. And you could do that in a bunch of different ways. Half kneeling, starting in static, would be half kneeling clean and press in order to build the mobility and the strength in that position, loading it already. Half kneeling 360s, half kneeling 360s, drive the knee forward. And then I would start doing slam ball, rip off the ground, half kneeling, rip off the ground, into catch, drive lead leg forward. Then super fun version of that would be going into doing that with a heavy bag, because you could do the hug grip, drive the knee forward, throw it over the shoulder. Just got to make sure you clear the back leg. Super fun series of ideas for building explosiveness there. But any half kneeling hip snap exercise, kettlebells is probably the easiest. Going into half kneeling maces is probably easier. Slam ball after that. Then adding the forward movement of that, carrying the load. And I can think of 5 versions just based on that. I can write a program around this just like that. The problem is it would require a soft surface like a BJJ floor so that when you drive that lead leg forward, you're not slamming it onto concrete. You could do it on concrete. It's just going to require, you're going to go through pants really fast. You're going to rip them up. Yeah, excellent question. Heavy bag, ground to shoulder overhead, ground to shoulder drive forward. Super fun drills. Cool. Rolling Hazard says he's going to have to look those up. Most people don't know what those are. I haven't made any videos on those, but maybe I will try to make videos on those. I'll just have to go buy a heavy bag. Should I buy a heavy bag and then leave it in Gambate? I leave a lot of stuff at Gambate. I feel like JP's going to get pissed at me if I put a heavy bag in there. He won't get pissed at me. He's a great guy. But he would let me do it. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll buy a heavy bag. Somebody send me a heavy bag. I need a heavy bag. Now I want to do a heavy bag series. Now you got my brain on complete overdrive about heavy bag drills. I had talked about this with Will from BJJ Fanatics last year when we were shooting a bunch of videos when we shot intermediate kettlebell, intermediate complexity. We talked all about this. We just haven't had a chance to do it. Good. All right, guys, this has been Mark Wildman. Thank you so much for showing up. I know it's been loud and annoying, but we try to do the best we can with what we can. Always do the best we can with what we can. Thank you guys for asking questions. The more questions you ask, the better I get at thinking about different people's perspectives. The better my answers get, the better everything gets. The goal is for me to replace myself with you guys. The more you guys listen to this stuff, the more you ask questions, the more you understand, the better the world gets. I'm always going to say this. I'm the only guy I know who's trying to put himself out of business. And hopefully you guys will put me out of business by being better and more thoughtful and having better programs than me. Thank you very much. And it's super loud in here. Have a good day. And I will put up a video later and we'll talk about stuff next week.